Well, hello everyone. Dr. Stephen Greene here. I got a special guest in my office today, Blaine Blantz. Blaine is a financial aid coach, financialaidcoach.com.
There you go.
That makes a lot of sense. But Blaine is not just a self-professed coach. He really has the credentials and the paperwork to back it up. Blaine is a former admissions officer at LaSalle University, correct?
Correct, and financial aid as well.
Financial aid. So he really he's got a lot of background in this, and he's going to share some excellent insights for us, especially if you're a family who's going to be sending a child to college in the next couple of years. So, Blaine, we're calling this How to Pay for College.
Correct.
That's a big issue for a lot of people, navigating the financial process. We got 6 steps, so let's get into it here. Oh, look at this. See, Blaine's got an advantage. He's a attractive young guy. I'm an old guy. But, yeah, it's funny. I got a criticism from somebody, we never see you. You're just
there
talking.
You go.
So that's what we look like.
Got the photos.
Yeah, we do have some good photos there. Anyhow, so that's how you get a hold of Blaine. But we'll repeat this. That's how you get a hold of me. So here's what we got. There are 6 steps. Why don't you just go through them? We're going to talk about them a lot more. So let's just list them. Step 1 is?
We got determine need-based aid eligibility.
And then from there?
We've got determine scholarships available.
And then you...
looking to apply to the school.
And hopefully get in.
And after that, then you've got to complete some financial aid forms, and we'll go over what those could be.
Exactly.
We look at comparing the award letters once we've got our schools we've applied to, completed the forms, and then ultimately, once we make the decision, we determine how to pay for the rest.
Rest of the tuition.
Perfect.
Of the tuition. Okay. So here's a little timeline. Some people might say, my kid's halfway through their senior year, but you can always plug in at some point. So
absolutely.
This process is kind of ongoing. So typically you're going to take the first 2 as early as you can.
Yes.
Once you apply to school, most people fall senior year.
Yes.
Financial aid forms a little later in the year, and so on and so on. So it's a process. And where do you actually come in here? What would your entry point be?
No, absolutely. So from step 1, that's where I would come in. The goal is to, as soon as possible, preferably before we're applying to schools, determine what role financial aid is going to have in the family's picture. So if they're going to qualify for aid or not. And like you said, that can be something preferably junior year, but it's something we can be doing all the way up until January of senior year when they're filling out their financial aid forms and their actual financial aid forms.
Now, is the point where it's too early? Like if somebody had a 8th grader, is it just at that point you just wait, or you still go out and collect information?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt for planning purposes. If you've still got some years there to save, but for getting a more accurate idea of what the impact of financial aid is going to be, that's going to have to be a little bit closer to senior year.
So eligibility basically means what you would be entitled to? Is that the right word to use here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you think of terms like estimated family contribution. That's what they're going to be using on the FAFSA, and that.
When you say that, you mean admissions.
So, admission, yeah,
financial aid.
Through the financial aid process, and that's what they use to determine. The schools use to determine how much in financial aid they're going to be giving the students.
Okay.
So what I found is a lot of students, parents, families in general are seeing the sticker price of a school, and they may discount a school and not even apply to it. But what I like to do is go through the process with them and allow them to see that they may actually be qualifying for financial aid, and not just the state and the federal aid. There are certain types of aid that are extended by the schools that are bridging the gap for those higher sticker prices. And a lot of people are very surprised to find that they are actually qualifying for aid despite what they consider to be large amounts of assets and income.
So what you're basically saying is you shouldn't discount. Let's say I have a client. The student wants to go to George Washington. I don't know where it ranks, but it's probably in the top 10 cost-wise in the country. And the parents say, no, don't even apply there because we don't want to pay $65,000 to send you there.
Yeah.
So you're saying don't think that way.
No, I would say that we should at least go through this process. Then we can see what it actually looks like on paper, and then it's going to give us a better idea of if the application is worth it. If there's any thought, if there's any fit socially or academically, I think it's worth applying because then
Okay.
you can go see what the aid is going to
So
be.
the first step is you got to determine what you believe you're going to get.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
from there, you look at the other end.
Exactly. So you look from the need-based over there, and we determine if you're going to be qualifying for aid or not, and there's some steps we can take from there. And then after that, once schools are being decided upon,
Mm-hmm.
then we can look at school-specific scholarship lists.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Sure. So we look at a school. You look at LaSalle. There are many
Okay.
different scholarships that you can apply for, and that can be applied to you coming in as a freshman at LaSalle University. They have certain requirements. You have to have certain certain things in your background, certain
Mm-hmm.
achievements being met. And what I do is go through and identify those opportunities, and then the families can reach out to the school to see if it is a fit, if it is indeed something that they would qualify for.
Is it sometimes? I've had experiences with students I've worked with in families where it's sometimes even departmental.
Correct. Yeah.
I had a boy I worked with who went to school to study marine biology in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually had a scholarship specifically within that department.
Exactly.
I guess they were trying to build the department. The trick was figuring out it even exists.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
Because they don't necessarily even advertise all these. Talk about the merit for a second. That's an expanding discussion.
Correct. So
it wasn't a big deal 3 or 5, 10 years ago.
No, exactly.
What's going on with that?
So you've got the need basis, which we talked about on the financial aid side, thinking of what we qualify for. But the merit, just like you said, these schools, these universities are putting out money to encourage people to be coming to the schools, essentially.
Okay.
And that's how they are able to bridge the gap in some circumstances, talking about a George Washington compared to other state schools and things like that. So like you just said, the trick is knowing that they exist. And going through the process, and that's what helps families do.
So just to recap for a second, basically we got 2 places you're probably going to draw money. One is if your financial package, AGI, etc., is in a certain situation, the school may say, hey, we're going to give you X%.
Correct.
Or X value.
Correct.
Then you've got scholarship grants. So this one is basically just going through the process. Because it's somewhat based on the formula, correct?
Correct, absolutely.
Right.
It is very much.
Whereas this is really where somebody like you would come in, or me, or a parent or a child would have to be a little more inquisitive about what's out there.
Correct. Yeah, you do have to dig into a little bit more.
Right.
Now, with the first one, there are some ways to be, if we determine that there is eligibility, to go and maximize your eligibility. And then the other point there is if we aren't qualifying for aid, then we look at what are some ways that we can be paying for school that are most efficient.
Okay.
So those are the first 2, certainly, your need-based aid and your merit-based.
And the take-home message here is don't start these August 31st if you're going to school September 1st.
The earlier the better, especially with the merit-based.
Right.
Those come and go quick. The need is a little bit more straightforward, but the merit-based, you've got to get started early.
So let's talk about 3. At some point, you have to apply to college.
Absolutely.
This is really my forte. But is there anything you could do in the application process itself that might move through this process? I mean, there are other things about applying to school. It's not just financial.
Oh, sure.
As we say here, there's social, there's academic, there's majors, there's environment. You want to be urban, you want to be rural, whatever. But what I'm hearing from you is don't rule school out just because of the cost.
Exactly. That's why I really encourage families to go through the process of identifying what their aid eligibility is, so that they can see and get a more accurate idea beyond the sticker price.
Okay.
And then that'll allow them to, again, not that they have to commit to the school, but that they should at least apply to it so that it's one of their options.
Offhand, and this really is a little bit off script, but is there, and I'm sure this varies tremendously school to school, is there some percentage of students who get aid?
There absolutely is.
Half, 60, 20. Is there? What would you throw out there?
No, what we use, and each school has that number, and that's presented by the College Board. And I use a service that mirrors the FAFSA, mirrors the CSS profile, those financial aid forms, collects data from the College Board, and it lets families know that exactly that information so that they can see what these schools individually
so this
are
is
giving
part
out.
of the discussion.
Absolutely.
If you got a high sticker price,
yeah,
but you also know that school gives 91% of their people aid,
yep,
and you know you're probably likely to get something, which in effect reduces the cost.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we do. We go through and we identify what the need is, because you have these private schools, especially the Ivy League schools with their endowments, they're meeting 90 to 100% of whatever your need is determined.
All right.
So then we can pretty much see exactly what that is going to be by
Okay.
going
Now
through
this
the
is where the
process.
rubber hits the road. I think this is where people get overwhelmed.
Yes.
At least parents.
Sure.
Students are kind of out of the loop on this. They've already done their heavy lifting with the essays and all that. But FOSFA, what does FOSFA stand for?
It's the free application for federal student aid. Now,
Okay.
where some confusion comes in is some families think that they hear free.
And they think the aid is free.
Exactly.
It's just free to fill out the application.
Free to fill out the application. Now, there are applications out there. There's FAFSA.com,
okay,
which is not free. So you never want to pay for completing a FAFSA. You should never have to pay for it.
Beautiful. So FAFSA is basically the federal standardized form
Yes.
that everybody can fill out. It's almost like a common app per se for financial aid.
Exactly. So, and that's the difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile, which you'll see next.
And
All
CSS
schools,
stands for?
So CSS is the profiles that are used by the independent
Okay.
private schools. Most of the Ivy League schools, Princeton has its own, very similar to CSS. All schools that want to give out federal funding have to have the FAFSA completed.
Now the FAFSA goes live about January 1st.
January 1st, correct.
And each year, even if you have 26 kids in college, you got to redo it every year.
You do, absolutely.
Right.
Yep, for each individual student.
And
yes.
it's, I can tell you, it's a little bit of an onerous process, and not something you're going to do over a cup of coffee for 5 minutes.
No, you're right. Now, the nice thing is that year to year, you're going to have some refill in, and it's going to have your information already logged in. Now, by saying that, though, and you talk about the FAFSA is kind of onerous, the CSS profile is actually 3 times as long as the FAFSA.
Oh.
So what they're doing there, the reasoning behind it, I like to give the schools a little bit of justification here.
That's okay. Justify away.
Well, the reason is because those that are giving out the CSS profile, like I said, they're going to be meeting 90 to 100% of need from the students. So they really want to determine that your number is actually your number. So they're going to be asking questions that the FAFSA was not.
So basically, this is something you're looking to do in January, maybe by February. I think, isn't the deadline March 31st, or does that change?
No, it's you think March 15th is one that you commonly see, but the sooner the better with the FAFSA. Now, what you can do with the FAFSA, because to complete your official FAFSA, you've got to have your updated taxes, but you can do an estimated FAFSA, which will get your hat in the ring for these different types of scholarships out there.
Okay.
With the CSS profile, that's something that actually can become available even in the fall of senior year, not even having to wait until January.
Gotcha.
Some of these schools are going to make you
all right. So
that.
In January, everybody's sitting around, they're filling these out, they're starting to communicate or some dialogue maybe with the schools, even if it's indirect. Now, hopefully, you get good news. Hey, you got into Temple, and we're offering you $10,000.
Exactly.
So this is what you're calling the award package.
Exactly.
Basically,
that's
the aid.
it. Yes.
You can substitute the word aid for award.
Yeah,
I like award. That sounds.
It does sound better,
like
right?
We get a trophy. I should have put a little trophy on this meeting. All right. So normally, hopefully, good case scenario, a child is accepted into, let's just say 5 schools for talking purposes. They may have 5 different offers.
Sure.
So you're going to compare them. As a college admissions person and an educator, I generally don't advise people to shop schools on price.
Sure.
But it's a reality. Talk about how you can negotiate.
Definitely. So
let's talk about that, because I don't know if that's an easy thing or if it gets nasty or what happens there.
No, I just encourage families to treat it like a business decision, because the schools certainly are. So like you said, if you go, you have to position it properly, and I work with families to give them essentially the scripts and how to ask for different things. Now, you're not going to want to go to the financial aid office and ask these things, because essentially, from working there, the experience is we can say, and we don't really have any in the financial aid office prerogative to increase your award.
Because it's based on the paperwork.
It's based on the paperwork. Now, on the other side, the flip side of that, the admissions office, they are being paid to put, for lack of a better term, butts in seats. And that's their goal.
That's a good way to put it.
So
paying,
butts in seats. Paying butts in seats, exactly. They want to make sure
they'll also buy books and meal plans.
You got it. So they're funding the school. So
the gatekeeper, once you're in, is the admissions people.
Yes, exactly. They're the ones that you want to talk to, and you want to position it that way. Because again, if you're talking to financial aid, it would make sense to talk to financial aid, because they're the ones that are awarding it. But the admissions is actually who you want to talk to, and I help families again negotiate and provide them with the scripts of what nothing's guaranteed.
Is it cool? Man, that's the only word that's coming to mind here. To play one against another. Like, could I go to? I'm just going to use Temple and Pitt because there's such common schools in my caseload. Is it okay? Like, Temple offers me $20,000, Pitt offers me $15,000, but I really want to send my kid to Pitt.
Yeah.
Just for off the cuff. Is it acceptable practice to go to Pitt and say, listen, guys, we love the school. Child loves it. Can't wait to be a Panther.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my rub. I got a better offer for aid. If it's bona fide, I don't know if you pull it out and show it to them. Does that happen, or is that crossing the line?
No, I totally think it's okay. I totally understood it when parents did it. Again, when I was in the financial aid office, there was nothing we would really do.
Mm-hmm.
But on the admissions side, again, it's a business decision both ways, so I think it's totally practical.
So you basically have to advocate for yourself.
You absolutely have to advocate
I
for
want to
yourself.
come here, but it's a $5,000, whatever, $20,000 thing over 4 years.
Yep.
Can you meet it?
Yeah, and there's different ways that they can do that. They always have a way of looking at different aid. And again, the earlier that you're able to do this, the better. But at the same time,
money isn't committed yet.
Correct.
Right.
Now, at the same time, what I always say is some of these schools that are asking for early decisions, everything like that, if they're doing it before January, if they're doing it before they're even giving you the award letter, and they're not having any type of merit-based scholarships, then where is your incentive?
That's a good question.
That's what I always work with families on.
So if you have to commit to a school by November 15th,
yeah,
but you don't even have a discussion about aid until April or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that puts you in a little bit of a bind.
It does. And
so what's the workaround there?
Well, I would just say there's different ways to do the early decision versus the early commit, which is really locking into one school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the conversation we have. I can understand it more on the athletic side when they're coaches, but again, a lot of these schools aren't even offering scholarships in that sense. So you just have to treat it, and that's the big thing. Treat it like a business.
So this item 5 is a good problem to have. But it still needs to be handled properly.
It does, yeah. And the other thing is the schools, they have similar types of aid, but they're not all going to be awarding the same types of aid. So there are, again, things you can be asking for and knowing how to do that.
All right, and here's where maybe it gets a little anxious for people.
Sure.
So you get in, at some point for most people, there's going to be a gap.
Yes.
And you can either afford it or not.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford it, you still basically have to come up with the school's giving you what they're giving you.
Sure.
So you got to figure this out. Now, right here, loans, at some point you got to write a check.
Yes.
Some people may have 529s or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just this simple? Like, school's 50, they're giving you 30, you owe them 20, got to figure it out somehow?
It's that simple, but then that's not simple. You know what I mean? For families to actually figure it out, the rest of the 20. Because like you said, you look at, there are student loans, but there's so many different options. There's so many different ways you can be writing a check and where you can be writing it from. There's different payment plan options, from the schools, from the universities.
Okay, so they might actually finance it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's ways that they do.
New.
It is newer, and they are, because of the increasing costs, they're doing more no interest as long as you're paying it over a 10-month period, 12-month period, however you're breaking it down.
So they may say your gap's 20, but instead of having to cut the check September 1st,
exactly,
you can pay us $2,000 a month for the school year.
Yes, exactly. Now, what families will also do is they'll say, okay, I would like to finance half of that, so they take a loan out for $10,000, and then they pay the $1,000
so maybe use a HELOC or
however they would. Absolutely.
Or they go to Uncle Blaine.
Yeah, exactly, right? How about it? Yeah, different student loans and parent. And where families really get overwhelmed is with the parent loan and the student loan options, and that's specifically what I can help them navigate.
See, I can tell you, in my day, and I got a little more tread on the tires here, but the landscape is very, very different.
Yeah.
When I was in school, there was the guaranteed loans. The government was really in this business a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
You pretty much were going to get a loan, whether almost if you needed it or didn't.
Sure.
Because the government would back it up.
Yeah.
What killed that to some degree was people defaulted on a lot of them, and it really put the dagger in it was the whole financial debacle of the mid 2000s or whatever.
Yeah.
The government, I'm not even sure what their role is in this anymore, except for FOSFA.
Exactly. So, what they do is they do have loans that are, any student that fills out the FAFSA is going to get a government loan. Now, the issue is it's $5,500 for a freshman. Mm-hmm. So now the gap is bridged between what's left to pay for. So oftentimes that $5,500 isn't enough in and of itself. So it
doesn't sound like much.
Exactly.
All right, so listen, are you confused yet? People out there, my loyal fans and followers. So listen, this is an overwhelming topic. Absolutely. I can tell you, especially if it's your first child. I think you get a little experience with it, but then you got the problem of putting 2 or 3 kids simultaneously in school, which is an additive bonus. So I would encourage you, reach out to Blaine. Here's his contact information, email and phone. You have a website? Yeah, financialcoach.com. We didn't put the, well, it's
I think so.
financialcoach right there, .com. Blaine really knows his stuff. which is important because I think there's probably some bad advice out there somewhere,
Correct.
especially on the internet. And you, as you point out, and I want to underscore this, you should never pay for this.
Yes, for the FAFSA, never pay for the FAFSA.
Right. So there's some things here that people are probably sort of sidebarring and trying to make some money on.
Correct.
That you really don't need. Good advice is worth it. All right. Here's how you get a hold of me. But Dwayne, I'm going to give you the last word. You want to say anything? Just sum this up.
No, I think that just like anything, with Steve and the tutoring, test prep, and the admissions, I think it's important to have a resource when it comes to financial aid and making that decision. Again, I just encourage families not to rule out schools just based on the sticker price. So
Beautiful.
Let's get to work.
Excellent. All right, listen, if you need more information, get a hold of Blaine or get a hold of me, Steve Greene. And thank you for listening. Please leave us some comments and some feedback, and we will see you with the next installment of the Make the Grade video series. So long.